In the unit 2 in the management information system, up till now we have discussed the hardware resources, the software resources, the networking, database management, and plus we talked about the database architecture also. We talked about the hierarchical, relational, and the network models. Now we are going to talk about some components of MIS which are mostly used at the middle and the top management level, and in the current session and in the forthcoming session we'll be discussing the decision support system, which we'll take up in this particular session, and then in the next session we'll be talking about the executive information system and the expert systems, which are generally again made use of by the middle and the top management, right? So this is going to be the agenda for the 2 sessions. So let us first start talking about decision support system. Now, what basically is a decision support system? As the name makes it clear, it helps the management in taking decisions, and that is why it is called decision support system. However, if you remember, the information reporting system is also helping you in making some decisions. However, here the decision support is provided for unstructured kind of situations, for novel kind of situations, which is generally, these situations are generally encountered at the middle and the top management level only, right? So this would be the difference in decision support system. It will help you take decisions when the situation is novel, new, different from the situations witnessed earlier, unstructured situation, right? So it's a computer application that helps analyze problem and make business decisions. So it will help you analyze problem and make business decisions, is oriented towards the future. Now please understand, now this is a major difference from what we have been doing in MIS and the information reporting system. There you were given some summary report regarding what has happened in the past. It was oriented towards past. It was oriented in what has already happened. It was actually giving you a snapshot of what has already happened. Our decision support system is oriented towards future, and it is going to give you an idea as to what might happen in the future. Because again, since this is a prediction for future, it may always go wrong. Now this is one weakness with decision support systems. They may always go wrong because you are trying to predict the future. The system is trying to actually forecast the different scenarios which might come up in future. So that is why it has been said that it is oriented towards future. Now, assist in non-programmable, unstructured or semi-structured decisions. I have talked about this particular point. Non-programmable, unstructured situations or semi-structured situations which you have never seen earlier, which you have never encountered earlier, and these are the kind of situations then that you generally have to face at the middle and the top management level. The higher you go up in the organization hierarchy, the more would be the frequency of these kind of decisions made by you, right? Because this is what the higher management has to deal with, unstructured situations which have never happened earlier. For example, the current COVID-19 crisis, this was probably never encountered earlier. So the top management had to make a call as to what to do when the crisis has struck, and how to go about maintaining the production rate and maintaining the production volume when there is a lockdown and the government has ordered the closure of all the industries. So now this was a novel situation, and naturally these kind of novel situations have to be dealt with at the top level and at the middle level also. In some instances the middle level management also deals with these kind of unstructured situations, and that is why these people who are manning the middle level management positions and the top level management positions, they need to have far more diverse skills than the people who are manning the lowest level of management, because the people who are manning the lowest level of management, they only have to deal with recurrent kind of situations which keep on occurring every now and then. So for them the decision making is relatively easier, which requires much less skills, right? So as I said, decision support system would help you in non-programmable. Non-programmable, since this situation is novel. You cannot prepare a particular program. You cannot come up with a particular program to tackle that situation. You cannot have a particular operating procedure. You cannot come up with a particular procedure or process to deal with these kind of situations, because these kind of situations, they have never happened earlier, and these kind of situations can also not be predicted. So you simply cannot come up with a program which tells the decision maker how to deal with these kind of problems. For example, at the lowest level of management, what might happen? How to maintain the production volume if a particular machine is broken down. Now this would keep happening on a regular basis, recurrent basis. So naturally you can come up with the standard operating procedure for these kind of situations. So what would the manager have to do when there is a breakdown? Now we can come up with a full procedure for this, and the manager will have to go by that particular procedure. However, this is not possible in those kind of situations which are novel, which generally don't happen every single day, right? For example, if let's say there's an earthquake, so how does the management cope up with that? What all would they be doing? Now this is something that you cannot have a particular procedure for, because these kind of situations don't arise every single day. So that is why they are called non-programmable. Right? I hope you understand the meaning of non-programmable kind of decisions, for which you cannot have a well-defined process or procedure. Now, what are these kind of situations? I have given you some examples. Potential demand for a new product under different scenarios. So a new product is being launched in the market. Now this kind of product has not been launched earlier. This is a new product. So definitely predicting the demand is going to be very, very difficult, and it is not something that you can predict just by looking at the past data. You cannot predict the demand of this new product based on what had been the demand of the product which you launched 2 years ago. So for example, if Maruti, let's say, is coming up with a new model of car, they simply cannot predict the demand for that new model depending on what was the sales record of Alto or K10. They simply cannot do that. This is a novel situation. This is a different launch altogether. Again, inventory depletion rate under different market conditions. How would the inventory deplete under different market conditions? For example, as you see now, in the last 2.5 months, beginning February, March 2020, because of the lockdown and because of the job losses, there is a lot of decline in the demand for various products in the market. Now, what would be the inventory depletion rate? How fast would the inventory get consumed in the production floor now that the market conditions are that the demand has declined and there is much less demand in the market for the product? So what would be the impact on the inventory depletion rate, and what would be the inventory depletion rate in 2021 when it is expected that the demand would bounce back to the normal? So that is something that you simply, this is something that is very, very novel. You simply cannot have a set structure to tackle these situations or to answer these kind of questions as to what would be the inventory depletion rate in this kind of a market scenario, right? Again, layout designs. Which layout design is going to be the best depending on what kind of product you are producing? So these are again non-programmable decisions. Profitability of a project under different inflationary scenarios. What if there is hyperinflation? What would be the impact on the profitability of the project? What if there is stagflation, very low inflation? What would be the impact on the project and its profitability? I hope you have read about the profitability of a project in your project management and also in your financial management, where you find out using the various methods like net present value method or the internal rate of return method. You try to find out, predict the profitability of a particular project and then decide whether or not to make that investment or not, right? So to predict it under various inflationary scenarios, because you are not aware as to what might be the inflation levels in future. So then you have got to actually think of various inflationary scenarios that can be there in future, and then on all those scenarios you have to find out what would be the profitability level. So you have to think of all the possible scenarios, and then you have to basically find out what would be the level of profitability at different level of inflation, at different rate of inflation in future. Now this is something that you will have to do for the future non-programmable decisions. Is this okay? Now please understand, decision support system uses routine data and spatial analysis. So they use routine data, however the analysis is going to be very, very different from what has been the case in MIS or in IRS or in information reporting system. So the analysis would be very different. Has flexible report format. So this is one characteristic of the decision support system, that the report format is flexible and there is no set pattern in which the reports would be presented. I hope you remember that in IRS there was a particular pattern, there was a particular format of report. So however this is not the case with decision support system, and this is pretty natural because decision support system does not deal with problems which have been encountered earlier. So it cannot have a set pattern to deal with those problems, and naturally it cannot have a set format to present its findings. Has narrower scope and is less reliable than MIS. What do we mean by MIS here? I hope you understand. I was talking about MIS in the broad sense and MIS in the narrow sense, and this is basically MIS in the narrow sense. I hope you remember. I told you this is information reporting system in which we basically extract the data collected by the transaction processing system and then we summarize it. So this is basically that MIS in the narrower sense, right? What we're saying is that the scope is narrow, which means that while MIS or IRS will be dealing with all different kinds of information, that would not be the case with decision support system. It would deal with a very, very narrow area, very, very narrow domain. For example, there would be a separate decision support system for predicting the potential demand, separate one for predicting the inventory depletion rate, altogether different one for predicting the profitability. So the scope would be very, very narrow, right? And is less reliable. And why is this less reliable? Naturally, you are not summarizing the record of whatever has happened in the past. You are predicting for the future. So even if you have the best of the DSS, and even if your the process of making prediction is the most scientific and data driven, even then there are chances that you would make a mistake. And that is why we are saying it's less reliable than MIS in that sense, because naturally it is predicting the future. It is not giving us a summary of what has happened in the past. Summary of what has happened in the past is going to be accurate. However, what might happen in the future, predicting it is definitely going to be very, very difficult, and it may not always, the prediction may not always prove to be correct, right? So that is why it's less reliable. Augments quality of interdependent or sequential decisions. Now, decision support system helps where there are interdependent or sequential decisions to be taken. Now let us understand what we mean by interdependent decisions. Interdependent decisions means which depend on each other. Let's say, for example, I have to predict the potential demand in the market for a new product launch, and then once I've predicted demand, what I have to do, I have to basically, once I've predicted demand, then I will have to order the raw material supply. So let's say I'm starting a new dhaba, for example. I have to predict how many aloo ka parathas would I be able to sell in the market. Let's say I come up with this figure 20, then accordingly I'll have to order the aloos also, the potato supplies also. So these are interdependent decisions, because the one would impact the other. That is what we mean by the interdependent decision. If the demand is going to be less in the market, naturally the aloo, the potatoes that I would be ordering, the quantity would be less. so they are interdependent. Fine. And how are they sequential? Sequential because first what did you do? You predicted the demand of how many, you basically found out how many aloo ka parathas are going to be sold in the market. Then you understood, okay, these many aloo ka parathas means I need, let's say, 10 kilogram of potatoes. Fine. Now what you have done, the second decision in the sequence is how much potatoes should I order, should I purchase from the market to prepare these aloo ka parathas. So these are sequential decisions. One would depend on the other one would depend on the third one, this ways. Right? Here, how much would be the production of aloo ka parathas depends on the forecast, depends on the demand forecast, and then how much aloos would be purchased as raw material from the market would depend on how many aloo ka parathas would be sold in the market. Right? So these are sequential decisions. The first one decided what I'll do. The first one was what is the amount of demand, what is the volume of demand that is there in the market for my aloo ka parathas. This helped me decide how many aloo ka parathas am I going to produce, and this helped me decide how much potatoes should I order, how much potato supplies should I purchase. So these were sequential decisions. In such cases, decision support system is of great help. Used by top and middle level executives, I've told you, such decisions and structured situations have to be faced not at the lowest level in management but by the top and the middle managerial levels, and that is why they are making use of decision support systems. Can't replace, however, please understand, this decision support system is helping you predict what might happen in the future, is helping you make decisions, but ultimately it cannot replace the managerial decision making. It does not give any decision, number one. It will only let you know as to what are the possible scenarios and what are the possible options that you have in front of you. And the decision again has to be made by the manager. So the manager would be only presented with the possible scenarios and the possible alternatives and possible alternative solutions. And then he has to decide which one would he want to go for. This is number one. And secondly, even if you have the best of the DSS, even then you cannot replace human intelligence in all aspects. For example, human mind can make use of a great deal of data. This is simply not possible with DSS. You cannot simply feed DSS with all kinds of data, right? And there are so many things which might impact the future, right? So you cannot replace human intelligence by installing a DSS, right? Now let us talk about the various components. You can see here in this particular diagram, the various components are shown. If you look at the bottom, you would find that here is the user, here is the user interface. User interface is how he's getting to interact with the DSS, decision support system, and here is the transaction processing system, which is providing what? It is providing the data to the DSS database. So DSS has got a database. This database is populated by data that is collected through TPS, transaction processing system, which will provide you historical data, right, and external data also. So now please understand, external data is also being fed into the DSS. So this would be internal to the company, various records that the company has generated and stored, while this would be the external data. For example, how many competitors have come up in the market, what are the changes in the regulatory environment, what is the level of inflation in the markets, is there any change in per capita income. So this kind of external data will also be fed into the DSS database, and there you see the model base. Now this is called the model base. Various models are there. All this data is basically then analyzed using these models. You see that the models, see these models have been mentioned here. Then we have got OLAP tools, data mining tools, and DSS software system. So there are different models which will help me analyze the data that I'm obtaining from here and here. So that data will have to be analyzed by these model base, and then the various alternatives would be shown to the user here. So the various alternatives would be shown here, and they would be presented in this manner also, which make it easier for the user to comprehend the various reports. And who is the user? I have told you, the middle and the top level executives, right? The top management and the middle management personnel. So the same thing I'm going to describe again now. The database, basically the component, the database. Now this one is the database. So basically transactional data drawn from organizational database. I've talked about this. The internal data from the organizational database, TPS and MIS. What do you mean by MIS here? Again, MIS in the narrow sense, IRS, information reporting system, which actually uses the TPS data to give some analysis and to give a summary of the TPS data. Then we also collect other relevant data from outside. I have talked about this. Media and online databases are there. So this database is populated in this fashion. Then we have got the model base. I've talked about this model base. I hope you remember. Mathematical and analytical models to opt from for data analysis. So now it depends on the user which particular model he would want to utilize, which particular tool would he want to utilize. For example, there are correlation regression analysis. I hope you remember it. This you have read in statistics. Then we have also talked about market forecasts, so you have read about them also. Optimization models is basically optimization is using the best combination. And layout designing, I hope you remember the production and operation management term, layout, how the different departments in a particular factory, they have been arranged. What is the location within the factory of different departments? That is the layout. So these kind of models are there. Now the user has to choose the model that he would want to make use of, right? So this is the model base. I've shown it here. And then we've got the hardware, which of course would be there. You will need some storage space for this purpose. DSS database. You would need some computer peripherals like the monitor here. So these kind of hardware would be there, and then there would be support tools. What do we mean by support tools? The user interface, which helps the user interact with the DSS. These reports which get generated, how the user would pose queries, and how the DSS would respond to the user queries. So this is what we mean by the user interface, interaction between the user and DSS, right? For example, this is an example of the interface. The DSS is providing the analysis, providing the results of the analysis in form of these flow charts or in form of these bar diagrams and pie charts, right? And then we've got the graphical analysis. So these kind of tools are also there. Many a times it is difficult for us or for anybody to understand the verbal reports, the written reports. So rather than that, if you present the same thing in the form of some graph or some pie chart or some bar diagram, then it is easily understood. It is more comprehensible, and that is why we have got these kind of tools also. And then we have got error correction, so that the DSS could make corrections for various errors which are there. And then we have got the pull down menus. Pull down menus basically, what do the pull down menus do? Should I give you an example of what a pull down menu is? Okay, let me give you an example. It is going to take some time. So basically what a pull down menu is, which basically, now what is a pull down menu? Okay, it's not to be seen here. However, generally what we find that, you see, when you click like this, now this is a pull down menu, right? So you can now this is basically, I've gone to Chrome basically, but then you've got pull down menus in various softwares that you use. Now you may choose one of these, right? Now this is the meaning of the pull down menu, because see, this has been pulled down and this menu has come when it has been pulled down. So there are 7-8 options which are coming to me, and I can make use of this. So that is why this is called a pull down menu. So such menus are also there in the DSS. So You click on that pull down menu, several options would appear, and then you can click on a particular option and that particular thing would be done for you. Now this is what we mean by the pull down menu. So these are the support tools which are there, which help the user to make the best use of the DSS, right? Now let's talk about the DSS capabilities. Now these are the various capabilities. So this is basically about the model base. Now we have got the capabilities like this. What if analysis? What if analysis, basically we basically want the DSS to let us know as to what might happen if something of this sort happens. So if this thing happens, what will happen? For example, if advertisement frequency is tripled, now this is if, what would be the impact on product sales, right? So what would be the impact, and that is why what if this thing happens, right? So these kind of cause-effect relationships can be analyzed here. Then the model building. What is model building? This is something that we have studied in regression equation also, in regression equations. And this, if you look here, now this is some kind of a regression equation. Sales is 1.5 times of the advertising expenditure and price divided by 2.3 minus price divided by 2.3. Now this is some kind of a model. Now if I put in this value and if I put in this value, I'll know how many units would I be able to sell, what would be my sales volume, right? Sensitivity analysis, what do we mean by this? We are trying to find out the sensitivity of some outcome, right, to changes in the inputs. Let me put it this way. I'll give you the example first. By how much would the product, now this is the result, product sales, and how sensitive the product sales are to change in advertising frequency. Advertising frequency is increased by 10%. What happens to the product sales? If increased by 40%, what happens to the product sale? If increased by 100%, doubled, what will happen to the product sales? Now this is the sensitivity analysis. So if supposing there is no change in the product sales, if I increase my advertising frequency from here to here, then probably I can say that the product sales are not at all sensitive to change in the advertising frequency. On the other hand, if there is a big change, I can say that product sales are very, very sensitive. So this is what sensitivity analysis is all about. And goal seeking analysis, right? Goal seeking analysis, you are looking for a particular objective, you want to fulfill a particular objective, you want to reach a particular destination. How do you reach that destination? What do you need to do to reach that destination? That is goal seeking analysis. What increase, now this is the destination here, I want my product sales to double, but then what is it that I will have to do to make this happen? What increase in advertising expenditure is required for the product sales to double? Is this okay? So this is what I'm trying to find out. Fine. What all do I need to change so that I'm able to realize the predetermined goal that I had set for myself. Here the goal was doubling the product sales. What do I need to do? Okay. Now one more thing that we are going to discuss in this particular module here is, please understand that generally, since the decisions which are made at the top level specifically, they are decisions which have great implication for the firm. So naturally, such decisions are not left to the discretion of just one individual. Many a times there is a committee which takes such decisions. Naturally, because committee would mean that there are a number of experts who can contribute their ideas, and this would help more fine-tuning of the decision. So it would always be better than a decision made by a single individual with just one domain expertise. So rather than that, having a committee is always going to be better, right? And that is why in organizations what happens is, generally at the top and the middle management level, there are committees which take a decision. The decision is not left to just one individual, right? And so decision support system, the way we have discussed them till now, they only are supporting one particular individual in making decision. However, now we have got a slight variant of DSS, and which is known as the group decision support system. And what do the group decision support systems do? They basically help in such collaborative decision making, joint decision making, right? And I have given you the rationale behind joint decisions, right? Group decision making is required in unstructured situations, and that is why we've got committees. Even at the topmost level in the government also, you would find that there are committees which take decisions. We have got cabinet committee on security and cabinet committee on economic affairs. So these are committees which have different ministers as their members. So these are joint decision making platforms. So group decision support system basically actually assists in joint decision making, and it is equipped with devices to enable communication between the various decision makers. So a committee is there, a group is there, they have to jointly take a decision. So GDSS does what? It, apart from whatever was being provided in DSS, it would have one extra functionality, and that extra functionality will be that it will be able to enable communication between the members who are supposed to take the decision, the group members who are going to make this decision. So it will also enable communication between the members of the group. And what will it facilitate? What all facilities are there? Electronic brainstorming. So rather than being present physically at one particular place, all the members who are supposed to make a decision, they will come together and electronically, using the communication devices, they would be brainstorming, they might be discussing. So the electronic brainstorming would be one facility. Then exchange of views, suggestions, again electronically, right? They may have some kind of a chat system wherein everybody can send in his or her message, and everybody can chip in with their own ideas for all to see. So this kind of facility would be available in a GDSS. Topic commenting, so the members would be allowed to comment on a particular topic, so they can post their comments, right? So that the discussion may take place, rather than just like it happens in a normal meeting. So if somebody puts forth an idea, the other members they may raise their objection, or they may make a comment, or they may support that idea. So for that purpose we have got this topic commenting functionality. And then we have got the electronic voting. Many a times the decisions are taken through voting rather than through some other means, because the consensus is hard to achieve. So what they do is they go by voting. So this functionality is also there. Electronic voting can also be conducted, so that it could be found out how many of the members are in support of a particular motion, or how many of them are opposing a particular motion. So all these functionalities are available in the GDSS. So GDSS is basically DSS plus these functionalities, right? So I have not talked about DSS in GDSS, because DSS we have already talked about. So all that which was there in DSS is there in GDSS also, plus this functionality to enable communication between the members in the group, right? With this we conclude our discussion on the DSS, and the next thing that we are going to discuss is going to be expert system, right? Thank you.